I got this reputation when I was in public accounting. When you have this complicated tax issue, go see David. But I got this reputation of if you needed anything solved in Microsoft Excel, like with spreadsheet, you were to go find David Hern. And so I just got this reputation. And to me, it was kind of God's way of showing, hey, dummy, I've been telling you the whole time, this fork in the road, accounting versus finance, you should have chose finance. And so it took me a lot longer to wake up to that than most people.
These are the things that you don't know when you are changing your track, when you are getting to your favorite things. And sometimes your favorite things aren't your favorite. But at the end, it creates a transferable skills. That's the point.
There's always two parties on opposite sides of each other. Usually these two parties are opposed in terms of value direction. Usually inherently one side is skewing to the low and the other side is skewing to the high. So the example I'll always give people is usually like with, the IRS or some kind of taxing authority. Usually that authority might skew high because they have tax dollars they're trying to collect, and the business owner may skew low in that example.
Hello everyone, welcome to the Innovator Circle podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Shah Siddiqui, CEO of Time Research and Innovation, GenZ Marketing Agency, and Chatbot AI. ICPcast is an initiative to bring innovative ideas, transformative insight, and forward-thinking methodologies for various industries, whether it is in technology, artificial intelligence, marketing, finance, lead generation, business advisory and development, tax and accounting, or sustainability. We bring you insights from some of the brightest minds, C-level executives, and industry leaders who are shaping the future. In today's episode, we are thrilled to welcome David Hern, CPA, founder, Sofer Advisors. He helps businesses navigate valuation, M&A, and exit planning with clarity and confidence. A seasoned valuation expert with credentials from Georgia Tech, Wharton, and Harvard, David brings decades of financial insight to every client's interaction, always with the heart of a teacher. Known as the Wow Guy, he supports founders through major decisions, whether it is selling a company, resolving a dispute, or planning for succession. David's mission is to run complex numbers into powerful people-first strategies that bring legacies, not just a balance sheet. So today, our topic is David Hern on valuation, exit planning, and the true story behind the numbers. So to all our viewers, get ready for practical strategies, insightful discussion, and fresh ideas to grow you, succeed, and make an impact. Hello, David. How are you today?
Better than I deserve. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Thank you very much for joining today's Innovator Circle podcast. As you know, that it is designed to discuss a specific methodology from end to end. We're going to be covering 12 individual questions, and as well as we're going to be touching some personal things that you wanted to share with our viewers. We have different type of viewers in our channels, and most of them are entrepreneurs, and they wanted to learn from the industry experts. So thank you for coming and sharing your thoughts. As you know that we're going to be asking you different type of questions. So Thomas, my first question to you, can you please provide a brief overview of your business and share what inspired you to enter through the field?
Sure, I'd be happy to. And thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. So I got into this, I was directly exposed to this type of work as quite a young man. I was at university at Georgia Tech, and I was really actually trying to break into public accounting at the time. Our fight song at Georgia Tech is about becoming a hell of an engineer. So I'm one of the few folks to go to that school and not want to study engineering, but rather woke up and decided he wanted to be an accountant of all things. And so all of my opportunities, though, throughout school, in terms of internships and co-ops and these kinds of arrangements, were in finance. And the doors were opening very easy for me in finance. And it felt like it was much harder to get those same doors to open in public accounting. And so I was using those internships as a means means to get to accounting. And I had not one, but two different internship, valuation related services. And long story short, I ended up going into public accounting and getting the CPA licensure, as you mentioned in your introduction. And it wouldn't be until I fell back into this. So I was directly exposed, but I remember a conversation with my father where he said, well, son, is this what you want to do with your career? When I was a lowly intern. And I said, I didn't just say no, I said, hell no to my dad at the time. And so it's life has a funny way of working out. And what I would say is I got this reputation when I was in public accounting, not, when you have this complicated tax issue, go see David, but I got this reputation of if you needed anything solved in Microsoft Excel, like with spreadsheet, you were to go find David Hern. And so I just got this reputation. And to me, it was kind of God's way of showing, hey, dummy, I've been telling you the whole time, this fork in the road, accounting versus finance, you should have chose finance. And so it took me a lot longer to wake up to that than most people. So that's kind of how I indirectly fell into this, was ran from it after getting directly exposed, went into public accounting. Then I got into investment banking, of which a good bit of this is in there. And then I would ultimately, because of a bunch of different reasons, decide to come back, if you will, to be the comeback kid. So that's kind of my quick summary of how I got back into valuation related services.
Thank you, David. That was a great add-on because, as I myself a father, I'm not sure that if you're married or if you have children, my son, he follows me, okay? And he wanted to do those kind of things that I love to do them. So I think there is an essence with you and with your story with your father that it's just like a different attachment. Can you tell me a bit more, although this is not a related questions, but I wanted to know a bit more about your father, like, okay, why he influenced you or maybe given you some direction to get to this point?
So I don't know that he necessarily influenced, at the time he obviously wanted me to find something that I could be passionate about and that would lead to opportunities for me that would give my future children and his future grandchildren, right, opportunities that, he didn't get and his father didn't get and so forth. So I think innately my dad really was just most concerned with wanting to make sure that his son was continuing that lifelong learning aspect that's important in our family and that would land somewhere and would develop a good career that would provide stable, financial footing and being rewarding, and that I would enjoy it. And so if anything, I think my father may have pressured me to maybe go a different route in finance because of the monetary resource. So because I do remember we had a bit of a debate on whether I should go into public accounting or not, but I felt like it would have been much easier to go, if you got the CPA license, it was much easier to pivot into finance than it would be if you got the CFA and then tried to pivot to become an accountant later. So I felt like, if anything, even if I didn't end up with staying in the CPA world, it will give me the kind of base knowledge I would need to be successful in finance. And that is ultimately what proved to be true. And a big reason why I left public accounting was it's very backward looking. I mean, you're spending most of your day reporting things that happened in the past. I liken it to driving a vehicle. Usually you don't last very long if you're just staring in the rear view mirror. You're looking at the wrong place. You're supposed to be looking out the windshield. Whereas finance, for me, where it's much more future oriented, much more about things to come and projections and these kinds of things. That's why I think it ended up being a much better fit for me long term than public accounting was at the time.
Thank you, David. It was a pleasure to talking to you. And we decide what we wanted to be when we are younger, and then the track changes. When I was younger, like on my college age, I was in pure science, mathematics, physics, chemistry, biology, and this kind of thing. And then my situation changed, my thinking changed, and I wanted to be a filmmaker. Okay, so I came to the UK to do my film degree, and then after a couple of years I had a brain tumor surgery, and I realized after my surgery that I cannot hold or carry heavy stuff and my eyes blurry. So what I did, I transformed that filmmaking degree to system engineering, studio production, and all other things to work on specifically brain work rather than front work. So these are the things that you don't know when you are changing your track, when you are getting to your favorite things. And and sometimes your favorite things aren't your favorite. But at the end, it creates a transferable skills. That's the point. So within our network, we talk about transferable skills. Doesn't matter you did something in your early career, some things that you are expert of, but rather you change your career. But everything that you combined at a stage, you could be proud of yourself because you can use that skills to do different things. Thank you very much for adding this valuable insight to our audience. And to everyone, you're watching ICPcast. I'm Dr. Shah and I have David Hern, CPA, Sofer Advisors. So my next question, could you please discuss the key issues in your industry and explain how your efforts making a difference for your clients and collaborators?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So I'll start in reverse for those two components. And this is a big reason what attracted me to this field was we are making a direct difference in the lives of many business owners and or other stakeholders that are tied to these business owners. You know, I was attracted to where, depending on what number we come up with, whether that's a low number or a high number, doesn't matter for this story, but real dollars are at stake on the kinds of efforts and initiatives where we get brought in. So for some, it could be a business owner who's contemplating selling and they know this is the only time they're ever going to sell that asset or any asset like this. And so they want to get it right. Others, they're going through arrangements with their shareholders where they've got shareholders coming and going. Others, you know, their marriage is on the rocks and they've got one shot to separate amicably and get this done right. So what's inherent between all the different contexts and umbrellas in which we get brought in, whether they're happy or unhappy or lukewarm, there's always two parties on opposite sides of each other. Usually these two parties are opposed in terms of value direction. Usually inherently one side is skewing to the low and the other side is skewing to the high. So the example I'll always give people is usually like with, you know, the IRS or some kind of taxing authority. Usually that authority might skew high because they have tax dollars they're trying to collect, and the business owner may skew low in that example, right? So all of these situations we get brought in have real world impact, which is what I love about what we do every day. You know, the real things are in motion based on our report.
Thank you very much, David. Yes, you know, when you talk about contribution, when you talk about adding value, the most thing is to create values that will give you a solid outcome for your client, not outcome for you, outcome for your client. That are real changes. So thank you very much for adding this to our conversation. My next question to you, who are the clients you aim to help and what key benefits do you deliver to them?
Our clients typically are privately held business owners. They're usually in the lower middle market. So they're entrepreneurs. You know, if their business was to sell, it would sell for something in the $1 to $100 million corridor. So usually we say 7 or 8 figure, you know, enterprise values. But they're, to be honest, a lot of them are businesses that you would, you know, either ride your bike past or drive right past, and you wouldn't even realize they were there, and that they're creating many jobs and are super successful in all kinds of interesting industries. And so primarily we're brought in by these owners to help them analyze their baby, right? That they typically have, you know, this one business, although some are serial entrepreneurs and have multiple babies. But again, this is an asset that they built with blood, sweat, and tears and took time to grow and scale. And now they're at a tactical decision involving those shares. And businesses are illiquid interests, and so they're hard to value. There's not a public market of these privately held shares, and so there's a lot of differences of opinion on what those shares might be. I always think of like a coffee cup, you know, there's what I see as just some coffee cup, but yet if you made that cup and you own that cup, and we were to both value these cups because you made it and you owned it, you would value that cup at $7.30. I would on average value that cup at $3.45. And so there's this inherent notion that happens because we built it and we have so much emotions and endowment bias tied to this. We can have these events where there's differences of opinion on value.
That's a great observation, David, because innovator myself, we always value things from our heart. Okay? And I have seen working with many innovators, like sometimes they overestimate their target or their business value. Sometimes they underestimate their business value. So as I work with many people including my different wings of businesses and as well as varieties of people, it's sometimes quite hard to tell them like the valuation you're having is not appropriate, and you do not have different type of puzzle pieces that you can say, okay, I have a systematic approach and I have a knowledge approach, so my knowledge values this much because I have created those knowledge with this kind of things, and research shows that the value of my knowledge is this much. And other than that, some people, they would say they wanted to price tag on their systematic design or maybe price tag on their application, but those applications are not those application. They can have a price tag. Maybe they have application on WordPress, okay? And sometimes they don't understand their WordPress application will not have that much value while they have a cloud application on their server or maybe something like that. So in those kind of circumstances, you might come across these kind of things. How do you match the value with the founder and with the company that you are selling?
Yeah, so I always tell people, look, we bring people to tears. We just don't know if those are happy tears or unhappy tears until we get brought in, right? So when you talk about the overestimate of value or underestimate of value, that usually will lead to one of those two sets of tears. But so, yeah, I mean, look, we're going to approach this first from logic. There are certain ways to do valuation. There are certain methods that apply in certain situations and certain approaches that apply in certain situations that, you know, books have been written about. Sure. But there's a lot of art in valuation as well. And so, however, when I talk about art, and I'm not a big, you know, I wasn't like an art major, so I'm not big, you know, art buff, but, you know, when I have been to a museum, which usually contains, you know, I would think beautiful pieces of art that are highly valuable and these kinds of things, but I still think we would have people that may differ on what these pieces are worth. Now, if I look at a canvas and I see this artwork, if I'm looking at something like a Pollock, and you ask me to describe what I see, I mean, I might be honest and say, this looks like something my 6-year-old did in kindergarten. You know, I just don't see how this is worth so much potentially, right? Or we could go to the most famous painting in the world at the Louvre, which is actually a quite small painting that was made famous because it was stolen, which is the Mona Lisa. And at least there, I can see a woman standing there. You know, and you and I may have differences of opinion of what we're looking at then, but I would think we would settle on who it was. You know, yeah, maybe our differences are more like, well, is she smiling or is she smirking, right? But those differences are much narrower. So what we're trying to do with valuation is to spend enough time in due diligence, vetting assumptions, in order for you and me to look at the same painting. Yes, we will still have differences, but we want it to be the realism art painting, like the Mona Lisa, where, you know, yes, we have differences, but they're much smaller and much more minor, right? Whereas if we have valuation differences that are more like the Pollock, we're just never going to get there. It's too big of a gap. And so what makes or breaks any valuation is really going to be that diligence on vetting assumptions, you know, and that's really where the art comes in, right? The less time you spend vetting these assumptions, the more you're going to have these deviations, what people see.
I just have another question to ask you, because I came across this kind of situation quite often. Like, okay, you don't have a system. So when you evaluate a company, do you ask them, okay, I think that we cannot sell your company right now, but if you tweak these bits, if you do work maybe a year or so on, we can rethink to evaluate your company and get a higher price tag. Do you do like that way? Or you just, if someone is wanted to sell their company, you just evaluate them and sell their company?
So I really appreciate you asking this question, because this gets to the undertone of of really the true thing that matters. So most often someone will come to us with any situation, not just your sales story, but any situation, and they will first come at it with a tactical need, and we're going to need to do the latter of what you said first, which is just, what's the score? I call them scoreboard moments. You know, am I winning or am I losing, so I can make this immediate decision in front of me? So let's assume for a minute that the answer is the losing score. It's the unhappy tears. And so we're not going to get the millions of dollars we thought, and we're not going to get the yacht and whatever, you know. Okay. But this is when we try and get clients to now shift from viewing valuation as merely this once in a while tactical tool to answer these scoreboard moments, right? Like, should I sell because there's someone in front of me off? Then we get into what you hit on, which is brilliant, which is, instead instead of tactical, it's strategic. Instead of a scoreboard now, it's a roadmap, right? Which is how can we use this technology, this tool, this know-how and valuation to now go where we want to go. We told you you're worth 5 million, but you want to be 10. That is when you make a major mindset shift and start using valuation no longer as a once in a while tool, but now a vital North Star type technique or KPI measure that now then becomes part of your processes. Everybody looks at financials on some cadence. They should be looking at their enterprise value on some cadence in order to start doing the things you're talking about, which is what can we change in what order to add the most amount of valuation and enterprise value, which means transferable value, meaning someone will pay you more based on making these changes. So that's really where the fun begins, is when we can get clients. Yes, we'll help them answer that tactical need, but then what do we do next, right? How can we get more people to want you? How can we get those offers higher? That's really when valuation gets fun to me, and helping owners think through the risks in their business and how they can start to address those risks in order to create that value.
That's a great answer. I love this. I love this answer because, when you work with different type of people, they think, okay, they are the best. Their systems are best. Yes, I understand that every founder, every CEO, yes, they are best. That's fine. But what if it is not best that you think? So it's better to talk to a person like you, like, okay, I think that this is best, but on your examination, the way you say it, the scoreboard, if this business is score up, middle, or low? You need to see that. And then based on that, you change your tactics, maybe change your decision, not selling it right now, working with you, and sell it a little bit later when you think that you change the scorecard from lower to middle or maybe higher. And I think that is the right way to do. But sometimes, you find different type of customer, they don't want to wait, and they wanted to sell it very quick, and they don't want it to earn based on their brain or investment. They just wanted to exit. So we're going to be talking more about that. Thank you very much, David, for your contribution today.
Can I add 2 quick anecdotes based on that?
Yes.
So the first is more an analogy. And let's say we focused, instead of like your value, of your company, let's talk about like your health, right? Which may be another score, now on the personal side instead of the business. Where would someone turn to? Where might they begin? Most people might finally awaken to be saying, hey, you should probably go to a doctor, And so what happens when they do that? Well, if it's the first time I've ever seen you and I'm your primary care physician, and it's the first time you've ever been to me, right? We need to run tests. We need to do an executive level physical. We need to establish a baseline. And like you said, is it red, is it yellow, or is it green right now? And so we're going to run all kinds of tests on you, on all different aspects of you. And that is now going to give us the framework to begin the fun, which is you're telling me you want to improve this, right? You want to go from the red to the yellow with eventually the goal to get to the green, right? Well, you're going to go make changes based on our discussions. And then what are we going to do? We're going to remeasure you in a year. You're going to come back for an update. We're going to see in the blood and in your gut, did the things you changed lead to health improvement? It's the same with the valuation. We got to do an initial, okay? We got to establish the score, but then let's make the changes and let's see what happens in a year. The only other thing I wanted to point out when you mentioned about the rushing at the end kind of thing and be done, it kind of reminds me, both myself and anyone else that's like me, who hates packing when it comes to traveling. It doesn't matter if I'm traveling for work. It doesn't matter if I'm traveling for fun. I will literally wait until almost the last minute to where Waze is telling me you need to leave the house right now to get to the airport, or you're not going to make it. Then I start to think about packing and I rush and I just shove things in a bag. That is how most owners treat exit planning, which is they don't think about it until they absolutely have to, and they extremely rush at the end. Some of them will make it to their destination, but I promise you they're going to make it there high stress. It wasn't efficient. They probably didn't have everything. I can't tell you how many times I get somewhere and I'm like, oh crud, I forgot a belt and now I got to go buy a belt. I've forgotten shoes before. I had to go do that in Austin, Texas. So that's unfortunately the way people are handling exiting and value enhancement. And the statistics are showing it's not working. Statistics are showing that 70% don't sell, meaning nobody wanted to offer to buy that baby. And statistics show of the 30 who do, most people who do regret it, meaning it wasn't enough for whatever was, so again, I think we have an epidemic of this, and I'm here and practicing every day. And a big reason why we started our firm was to show people that there's a different way and trying to make a dent on these scary statistics.
Thank you very much, David, for adding this value. Because, I was laughing when we're talking about it. I have a tendency that I will pack a week before because I don't want it, because I'm forgetful. Okay, I have short memory. So I will make a list and I will do all the things before 1 week before, that everything is set. And I know that what time is my travel to go to airport, what time I'm going to taxi, what time I'm going to this. So everything is lined up in a way. But if I compare that to my wife, she's just like last minute. Okay, so what she will do, sometimes she will forget her medication, sometimes she forget these things and that things. I said, okay, you see, I have everything, but you didn't pack it well. So you're going to be ending up not having those things with you. I can also see my brother-in-law, similar way. They will miss the train or miss the plane because they didn't plan ahead. So thank you for adding this, because I think most of the leaders in SME sector or in growth sector, it doesn't matter which sector you are in, they don't think strategically. Like, okay, they have a business, maybe they have huge amount of money, they wanted to invest it, and then that doesn't bother if they are losing or winning. That's not a race for them. But there are some founders, they think strategically, okay, to get to one stage to the next, that what are the valuation, how they can increase the valuation, talk to different people and make it happen at the right time, at the right way. Thank you. I just wanted to ask my next question to you. It's getting interesting. What makes your approach unique to helping clients achieving these outcomes?
Sure. So one of the ways that make us unique on this is the world I came from is predominantly measuring themselves on a billable hour model, meaning every employee is tracking their time when they're working on client work and when they're working on non-client work. The firms view profitability where the project only took so many hours, basically, right? And if it took longer, then that per project profitability goes down, right? So the quicker you can get it done, more profit. But when you start going that route, and you rewarded people that way, it leads to change. And so what happens are people rush. And I know with my own children, they make mistakes when they rush. They don't tend to make as many when they don't. So that's the first thing. The second is, if this is really about, to truly get to the accuracy, and I'm going to buy your business, I'm going to spend a lot of time to make sure I am not making a huge financial mistake, and vice versa on the other side, right? And so it's all about time, and the more time we can spend, the better. But if that's not how you're tracking yourself, right? Because it's the inverse, right? If I do that, you're not making any money, right? And so we decided to, rather than make the billable hour the top, KPI measure for our people, we threw that at, it's much lower on our scoring, because we need to spend ample time. We need to ask questions that have nothing to do with the valuation at hand, so we can continue to add value to that client. Like, I may not need to know if you are, in a happy marriage to value that manufacturing company. However, I'm missing an opportunity to connect you to a family law attorney if you are having trouble, right? I'm missing an opportunity to enhance yourself, your family, and your business, right? And so for us, our competitive advantage is that we do have these lower than industry standard per project profit margins, because we're willing to spend more time in order to get rid of this potential garbage in, garbage out dynamic that a lot of these other firms have, because they're just viewing it as volume. I've got to churn these out. I'm on to the next. So they really don't get to know the business in such a way that in 2 years or 3 years, when that valuation is stress tested, often that valuation is very different from what the valuation that actually happened. And then the client realizes they got what they paid for. And that's the sad thing, is they don't find that out until much later, when the valuations are stress tested by the IRS or by a buyer or whoever.
That's a great explanation, David. And I think all our viewers, they will like and wanted to hear more from you. So my next question before we go to our break, are partnerships part of your business model? And from your partnership perspective, what benefits make you an ideal collaborator?
So if I understood the question correctly about our partnerships part of our practice, I believe the answer is yes. But again, it depends on how you mean this question. We're not a giant firm. We don't have 60 offices and 90 services and all this. And I don't want to be that. But what that means is I need to have, rather than direct solid lines to different business units within my Sofer Advisors entity, I need to have lots of dashed lines between different people and different logos. And so I have many, many dashed lines, informal lines between our company and other companies, which I would take to mean that I have these partnerships from legal to accounting to financial services to insurance to, coaching and so forth. So when we finally have that first inception valuation done, when the client now has been educated, not just on what their value is, but now is starting to make this mindset shift of using enterprise value as their North Star, now we can start to say, okay, what areas in this business need to be improved? And there's going to be certain areas that our firm, can do, but then there's going to be plenty that we can't. And so we need to have best of breed partnerships. For example, if we realize that your firm has a lot of IT concerns, then we're going to get you in front of, an MSP or a CISO or somebody to come in and clean up your IT infrastructure, right? Which again, is not going to be me, even though I did go to Georgia Tech, but again, I'm an accounting and finance guy. So, I've got to have these partnerships so we can bring best of breed logos in front of you to enhance different aspects of your baby. So again, when we get to the rest of the world, they see what we all see.
Thank you very much, David. Thank you very much for your contribution today. So to all the viewers, we're going to go for a small break now, and we're going to be right back. I'm Dr. Shah Siddiqui, and I have David Hern, CPA, founder, Sofer Advisors. So for now, we're taking a brief break before diving into some fantastic insights. Stay tuned. We will be right back.
Great conversations start with thought-provoking ideas, and visionary leaders turn them into reality. Meet Dr. Shah Siddiqui, an entrepreneur, AI strategist, and business growth partner dedicated to helping professionals and companies push boundaries, innovate, and thrive to drive transformation.
Did you know that 92% of executives consider digital transformation and AI adaptation are essential for staying competitive in today's market? Furthermore, companies that use data-driven insights for decision-making also see a 23% boost in profitability compared to those that don't. Through ICPcast, we bring together the brightest minds in AI, business, finance, marketing, and other tentative fields to deliver strategies that drive measurable success.
Dr. Shah is the founder and C-level executive and leads multiple startups, including GenZ marketing agency, Neurodivergent Business Consortium, NBC, Time Research and Innovation, TRI, and Green Threads DPP. He is AI and technology expert and helps businesses harness AI for scalability and efficiency. He is a sales and business growth strategist and the creator of the Sales Funnel Accelerator, SFA program, to guide C-suite executives to maximize conversions and revenue.
You might be surprised to learn innovation isn't just about your ideas. It's about execution. In fact, only 10% of companies successfully turn their innovative ideas into scalable strategies, while the rest struggle with execution. Businesses that focus on effective implementation rather than just ideation 3 times more likely to outperform their competitors. After working with industry leaders and disruptors, I have learned one thing: success isn't just about what you know, it's about how you apply it. That's why I created Sales Funnel Accelerator and ICPcast to provide actionable insights that you can apply right way to drive business growth and innovation.
Podcasting is now one of the most powerful tools for business influence, with 80% of listeners taking action after hearing expert insights. And when it comes to driving sales, 78% of social sellers outperform peers who don't use social media for business networking.
Are you ready to be the part of the conversation that is shaping the future of business? Let's explore innovation, strategy, and leadership together. Book your cast with me today. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to ICPcast. And I'm Dr. Shah Siddiqui, and I have David Hern, CPA, founder, Sofer Advisor. We got some exciting insights coming up. So stay with us as we dive deeper into the world of finance, technology, innovation. Let's get started. So David, thank you very much once again for your contribution today. And I know that the viewers, they're going to love this podcast when we start broadcasting it to our social channels, YouTube's, and social media. So my next question, are there any misconceptions about your industry that you wanted to share with our viewers and clarify?
I mean, I've kind of hit on a big part of it. You know, sometimes you'll hear people say there's no science or it's all art and all this. And again, it's both. There is science. There are only certain answers on certain things. But yes, there is art too. But again, if we spend enough time looking at the facts, we should start to see the same picture, or at least the same direction of the picture. We may not get to the exact same dollar amount. And then again, I think the other big misconception is that this is just that once in a while thing you do every 10 years when there's this major event. And it's like, no, this is something that you should be doing regardless of any current and or future need from a strategic standpoint. So I think that is the biggest misconception, is this is just a tactical tool to be used once in a while, and we're missing major opportunities for that strategic roadmap level thinking with valuation.
Thank you, David. My last questions before we jump into our conversation to some of the fun parts. What advice would you give to the inspiring entrepreneurs looking to make a mark in your field?
This won't be that unique. You know, right before I had gone into the entrepreneurial path, a book that was recommended to me was The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. And it was spot on. I mean, your first year, you're wearing so many hats, from, the operator hat to your manager hat to your entrepreneur hat. And you've kind of got to do it all. It makes me think of the picture with the stick and the twirling the glass plates, and yet you're wearing 6 hats at the same time. And that is what entrepreneurship's gonna feel like, if not your first year, certainly in the not too distant future. And I think leaders are readers, and so I would encourage any entrepreneur to read around these topics. I would encourage them to listen to podcasts like yours and others that are sharing people's journeys. I think if they can interview those that have gone ahead and done this maybe 10 or 20 years before them, I think a lot of people are willing to help and share their stories on if only they knew then what they know now, what things they would have done differently. I think that saves people time. And then lastly, I wish I had joined some kind of mastermind group, being around other entrepreneurs on a constant basis. It's invaluable to have these safe places of entrepreneurs to where you can be really vulnerable on issues you're facing, struggles you're facing, because unfortunately having that title can be a very lonely spot. And a lot of your friends and family you can't turn to understand and empathize with certain things you're going through. And so I think it's instrumental to have that community, whether that's EO or Vistage or these kinds of networks. And I'd be happy to connect any of your listeners to those kinds of circles to help get them in a forum, in a safe place.
Thank you very much, David. It was a great pleasure talking to you. Now is the fun part. So I'm going to ask you some questions. You might feel uncomfortable. That doesn't matter really. It's just for fun. Name a food that you hate to eat, but sometimes you eat them.
So a food that I hate to eat, yet sometimes still eat it. It's interesting. As I've gotten older, all the foods that I used to hate, it's like my taste buds have changed a lot. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, I love these things now. Okay. But what I'll say is, when I do find something that I don't enjoy, a lot of times I can blend it. Meaning I have a fruit smoothie, and the fruit is so powerful, it can kind of overcome the taste of whatever that is, whether that was kale or a date or whatever. And so I've found that when I do have something that's maybe of the healthier caliber that I don't enjoy, if I just throw it into this cocktail of a fruit smoothie, with a lot of blueberries or other berries, then, I'm quote unquote eating it and still getting the benefits without, maybe looking like my children who just ate broccoli kind of thing. So, but for me, it would be something like that, like a kale or a date or some other vegetable type food in which, I'll just throw into a smoothie instead of eating it by itself.
When you become lazy, what you mostly do?
When I become lazy, what what do I most do? So that's a difficult one for me because I'm one of these people who on vacation doesn't just sit there in the sun by the beach. I have to be moving like at all times. So when I start feel lazy, I start to get stressed and I start like moving. Like I have to move around and walk around and pace around. So I don't, it's kind of I think my wife would laugh at that question because I'm like the furthest thing from being lazy. I'm always looking to, be doing something with my time. And that's, again, that's a negative is I don't get to rest or enjoy the view of the summit. I hike up the 14,000 footer and rather than soaking in the view that I just earned, I'm looking at those mountains that are out in that view, thinking about that next challenge, which, is good and bad, but that would be my answer. I don't know that I inherently have
I take with you what you're coming across because I can't take rest. That's not on my blood. Similar, if I have to do something all the time, even if I go for holiday is not for my, it doesn't matter really if I go for holiday, I have to do work. I cannot take rest. Something has to be always steering me to do something. And my wife, she will say, okay, you are on holiday and you are doing this. I said, I cannot stop. That's who I am. I cannot change it, but spend time maybe differently. So when I am bored, I go to do different work. Like I do woodwork, I do gardening, I do lots of other things. So if I'm in holiday, I will find something that is related to holiday, but totally not capturing my time in the other ways. But anyway, thank you very much for sharing this. My next questions, if I give you £1 million, what would you do with that money?
If you gave me £1 million, what would I do with that money? Well, I've never been blessed to have anything close to that type of windfall in my career. And given where I am in life now, I think honestly, I would probably take half of that money and potentially use that for a software as a service startup idea that I have. So I might use some of it for seed capital for an idea. It's an idea that I will regret if I don't at least try. I'd rather fail than not do it. And, I don't think I could live with myself otherwise. So I would use half of it for that. And I would probably honestly give the other half away because, again, I just feel like I'm at a place where I've already been given so much. And so I feel like there are probably others who may need it more. And I would love to impact somebody and see that impact the way people had impacted me and maybe don't realize that they had impacted me in such a way. So I would love to, bless somebody else.
Thank you, David. I don't have any question anymore. So it was a great pleasure to talking to you. At the end, I just asked my guests to give some tips to the audience. What would you give it to them from this conversation?
Yeah, no, I very much appreciate being invited to your podcast. Thank you again. As far as takeaways, the first is, valuation is an art and a science. It's not just a tactical tool. It is also a strategic planning tool, but it's not just use it as, telling us our score, but let's also use it as that roadmap of where we want to get to, right? We want to tell your unique story through the numbers, but we want that story to be a non-fictional story that the rest of the world also sees and does not see fiction. And if we can do that, as well as understanding that you are not the only stakeholder that needs to get this right, that we need to do this not just for you and your loved ones, but there's so many other stakeholders counting on you to do this right. And I think if we can adapt those two big shifts, that stakeholder view with that valuation North Star KPI view, then I think we are well on our way to achieving our life's work.
Thank you, David. And thank you, everyone, for joining today's Innovator Circle podcast. We hope today's conversation with David Hern, CPA, founder, Sofer Advisors, have sparked some fresh ideas and provided valuable insights to elevate your business strategies. If you wanted to have a business exit or you wanted to grow your business to a stage that can be beneficial for you, your company, your employee, and the community. So thank you, David, for your contribution today. And I will ask and request to all our viewers, please subscribe to our newsletters, icpcast.com, share this episode with your network, leave a review it helps us inspire leaders like David and bring insights from their story, from their development. So like our page on LinkedIn and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Sales Funnel Accelerator, and behind the scenes, and as well as all the stories. Until next time, stay inspired, stay curious, and keep leading the way of innovation. Thank you, and bye-bye.